You're about to embark on a journey through the darkest corners of America's past, a tale of deceit, manipulation, and murder that will leave you questioning the very fabric of colonial society. In the church records of Connecticut colony, between 1647 and 1685, over 300 wills were executed in the small settlement of Newfield. All of these wills were processed through the same three men, sharing the surname Pemberton. But what historians found disturbing wasn't merely their number, but what was discovered beneath the floorboards of the Puritan family home. Hundreds of small glass vials containing residue of opium and belladonna lay hidden, alongside journals detailing the divine visions of dying colonists. Visions that mysteriously benefited the Puritan family's growing fortune. 23 people died within days of signing these wills, all while experiencing what witnesses described as rapturous communion with the divine. The authorities who discovered these records reportedly sealed them away, fearing the scandal would undermine public faith in colonial institutions. Before we continue with the story of the Puritan family, if you're brave enough to hear these dark historical truths, make sure to subscribe to our channel. This type of content isn't for everyone, only for those who truly seek to understand the shadows lurking in America's past. Leave a comment telling us which state you're listening from. The case remained buried in historical archives until 1998, when a Yale researcher stumbled upon these documents and began piecing together what may have been early America's most sinister case of systematic inheritance. Fraud. The researcher noted something particularly chilling. The Puritans kept meticulous records of their victims' last moments, including transcriptions of their drug-induced utterances that revealed a pattern of careful manipulation through religious suggestion. What follows is the true account of the Puritan family and their decades-long scheme of manipulation, deception, and ultimately murder. In their quest for wealth and power, did the Puritans simply exploit religious fervor and medical ignorance, or was there something more sinister at work in colonial Connecticut? The truth, as you're about to discover, is far more disturbing than most historical accounts have dared to reveal. You're about to step into the depths of a New England community, one that was born from the ashes of desperation and the pursuit of religious liberty. It's 1647, and the winter has been merciless, with food stores running low and illness spreading like wildfire through the closely quartered settlement. In this desolate landscape, three brothers emerged from the shadows, their arrival shrouded in mystery. The Puritan brothers, Obadiah, Jeremiah, and Cornelius, came bearing letters of introduction that seemed to hold the weight of authority. But, as we would later discover, these documents were expertly forged, crafted with precision to deceive even the most discerning eye. The Puritans had spent months perfecting their deception, studying the handwriting styles and sealed designs of prominent colonial authorities. Their arrival in Newfield was no accident. It was a calculated move, one that preyed on the community's desperation for educated leadership. And so they presented themselves as saviors, each brother embodying a different aspect of salvation. Obadiah, Puritan, the eldest at 34, donned the cloak of a physician, his black leather case of medical instruments a testament to his supposed expertise. He was the answer to the community's prayers, a beacon of hope in a time of great need. Jeremiah Puritan, the middle brother at 32, was a minister who had studied at Cambridge, his sermons weaving a spell of quiet authority that could mesmerize even the most devoted Puritans. And then there was Cornelius Puritan, the youngest brother at 29, who presented himself as a man of legal training. He was the embodiment of worldly sophistication, a trait that seemed to set him apart from his more austere brothers. But, as we would soon discover, appearances can be deceiving. You see, this community was not what it seemed. It was a haven for those seeking refuge, but also a breeding ground for secrets and lies. And the Puritan brothers were at the center of it all, their true intentions shrouded in mystery. As you delve deeper into this world, you'll uncover the dark underbelly of Newfield, where the pursuit of power and control knows no bounds. And the Puritan brothers, with their forged letters and calculated deception, will be at the forefront of it all. You're about to step into a world where the lines between life and death are blurred, where the pursuit of power and knowledge can lead to unspeakable horrors. Welcome to the settlement of Newfield, 1647. In this foreboding place, three brothers, Cornelius, Obadiah, and Jeremiah, have arrived with an air of confidence and authority. Their clothing, though modest in Puritan tradition, speaks of a finer quality, hinting at their true intentions. Within months, they're appointed as magistrate, responsible for recording the darkest secrets of the settlement. The brothers take residence in a house that's been vacant since the Wilton family succumbed to fever. This two-story wooden structure stands apart from the other dwellings, its stone foundation and multiple rooms a rarity in a time when most families lived in single-room dwellings. The Puritans quickly set about expanding it, adding a separate study for Cornelius's legal work, a small apothecary room for Obadiah's medicines, and a private prayer chamber for Jeremiah's spiritual contemplations. What makes the Puritans unusual is that none of them have brought wives or children with them. When questioned, they'd explain with practiced solemnity that they've dedicated their lives to service rather than family. Our calling is to tend to God's flock, Jeremiah would say, not to raise our own. This abnormal arrangement raises few suspicions in a community where piety and dedication to community service are the highest virtues. The brothers quickly established themselves as pillars of the community engine. Obadiah tends to the sick with tireless dedication, often spending days at the bedsides of those suffering from the various illnesses that plague colonial settlements. Jeremiah provides spiritual comfort, his prayers and scriptural readings bringing peace to the afflicted and their families. Cornelius ensures that all legal matters are handled with meticulous attention to detail. It's good wife Sarah Holcomb who first benefits from what would later become known as the Puritans' spiritual preparation for death. As the widow of one of Newfield's founding families, Sarah has inherited a considerable property on the eastern edge of the settlement. When she falls ill with what Obadiah diagnoses as consumption of the lungs, the three brothers take a special interest in her care. For weeks, they visit her daily, Obadiah administering various tinctures and powders to ease her earthly suffering. Jeremiah reads scripture and leads her in prayer, and Cornelius ensures her worldly affairs are in order. You're about to uncover a dark secret that has been hidden for centuries. A secret that will make your blood run cold and your mind question the very fabric of reality. It's a tale of three brothers bound by a twisted desire to control the minds of the dying. According to the journal of one of their victims, Sarah Holcomb was the first to fall prey to their sinister plan. A brownish liquid, dubbed the Elixir of Divine Sight, was administered to her in carefully increasing doses, sending her into states of delirium that the brothers described as spiritual rapture. The journal reveals a disturbing methodology, one that would make even the most seasoned horror fan shudder. The widow, weakened by grief and age, required 15 drops initially. Obadiah wrote, "Jeremiah shall introduce the concept of divine guidance regarding her property." On the second day, after the medicine had taken root in her mind, Cornelius prepared documents with blank spaces to accommodate whatever specifics may emerge from her visions. 3 days later, another entry reads, "The widow responds most favorably to mentions of her deceased husband. When the elixir took effect, Jeremiah need only suggest that her husband awaited her in heaven, wishing to communicate his desires regarding their earthly goods. She became most pliable when shown the family Bible during these episodes. Carefully orchestrated by the three brothers, Sarah would speak in disjointed phrases about visions of heaven and divine instruction. Cornelius, always present with quill and paper, recorded these utterances, later presenting them as Sarah's divinely inspired final wishes. Among these wishes was the bequest of her entire property to the Puritan brothers, who would use it for the glory of God and the benefit of his servants in Newfield. When Sarah Holtcomb died on December 14, 1647, her funeral was attended by the entire settlement. Jeremiah delivered a moving eulogy, speaking eloquently of Sarah's generosity and spiritual wisdom. Cornelius read aloud the will he had prepared, explaining to the assembled mourners that Sarah had been blessed with divine visions in her final days. A community where divine revelation was not only believed possible but expected among the truly faithful. No one questioned the unusual circumstances of Sarah's will. Instead, many saw it as confirmation of the petent's special relationship with God, for who else would a dying woman entrust with a divine mission? With the acquisition of the Holtcomb property, the Petons began to establish what they carefully presented as a ministry of preparation, a special service for those facing death. You're about to step into a world where the lines between good and evil are blurred, where the pursuit of power and wealth can lead to unspeakable horrors. Welcome to the Puritan's Newfield, where the year is 1647 and the air is thick with deceit. In this twisted paradise, Obadiah would diagnose the ailment and administer his medicines, but beware, for his concoctions were not always what they seemed. Jeremiah would provide spiritual counsel, but his words were laced with manipulation, designed to keep you in line with their sinister agenda. And Cornelius, the mastermind behind it all, would ensure that the law was on their side, no matter how heinous their crimes. As death approached, the brothers would administer their secret elixir, record the resulting divine visions, and emerge with documentation of the dying person's wish to contribute to their ever-growing ministry. It was a clever ruse, one that allowed them to accumulate wealth and influence at an alarming rate. By 1650, they had acquired 4 additional properties and established themselves as the wealthiest family in Newfield. But beware, for their growing power raised few eyebrows. They lived modestly, despite their means, continued their dedicated service to the community, and spoke often of their plans to build a proper church and school with their resources. It was all a clever facade, designed to keep you from suspecting the true nature of their activities. The Pemberton were masters of manipulation, using their charity and benevolence to mask their true intentions. They donated a portion of their harvests to families in need, established a small charity to provide medicines to the poor, and funded improvements to the meeting house. J. Chores presented the beating house betrothed. When Goodman William Fletcher, one of the settlement's elders, privately questioned Jeremiah about the unusual number of property transfers benefiting the brothers, Jeremiah responded not with defensive anger, but with sorrowful concern. He suggested that such doubts might indicate a weakness of faith and offered to pray with Fletcher for strength against the devil's attempts to sow discord. The psychological manipulation was masterful. Basie. The brothers also instituted what became known as Testimony Sundays, special worship services where they would invite those who had witnessed the divine visions of the recently deceased to share their experiences with the congregation. You're about to step into the depths of a colonial settlement where the lines between truth and deception are blurred. It's 1647 and the air is thick with the weight of secrets. In this foreboding world, 3 brothers, Jeremiah, Cornelius, and Obadiah, have established themselves as the de facto rulers of Newfield. Their grip on power is so tight that no one dares to question their authority. But then, a carriage arrives in the summer of 1664 bearing a young woman named Constance Peyton. She's the niece of Obadiah, and her arrival sets off a chain reaction of events that will change everything. Constance is a mystery, shrouded in an aura of innocence and kindness. But don't be fooled, she's about to become the key to unlocking the darkest secrets of Newfield. As you delve deeper into the heart of this settlement, you'll discover that the brothers' control is not as absolute as it seems. There are whispers of a scheme, a web of deceit that threatens to consume them all. And Constance, with her piercing eyes and gentle smile, is about to become the catalyst for their downfall. You'll find yourself drawn into the world of Newfield, where the boundaries between reality and nightmare are blurred. The air is heavy with tension, and the shadows seem to move of their own accord. You'll hear the whispers of the brothers' private correspondence, where they discuss the risks and opportunities presented by Constance's arrival. Obadiah sees her as a liability, a potential threat to their carefully constructed facade. Jeremiah views her as a means to an end, a way to deflect questions about their lack of wives and add to their appearance of respectability. And Cornelius, ever the pragmatist, recognizes both the risk and the opportunity presented by Constance's inheritance. But what happens when the truth begins to unravel? When the facade crumbles and the darkness that lies beneath is revealed, you'll be left with a haunting question: can the secrets of Newfield ever be truly buried? If you dare to uncover the truth, subscribe now and join me on this journey into the heart of darkness. You're about to enter a world where the lines between reality and madness are blurred. A world where the pursuit of power and wealth can lead to unspeakable horrors. Welcome to the dark side of colonial New England, where the year is 1647 and the whispers of evil are just beginning to spread. Her letters, hidden away for centuries, reveal a tale of unrelenting terror. Constance, a young woman with a fragile existence, lived among the pious and severe community of Newfielders. But it was her uncles, Obadiah, Jeremiah, and Cornelius, who would soon become the instruments of her deepest fears. According to the accounts that have been pieced together, it all began when Constance stumbled upon a hidden compartment in her uncle's medicine chest. Inside, she found vials containing substances that seemed to defy explanation. Labeled in a code that only they could decipher, these mysterious elixirs would soon become the key to unlocking a world of unspeakable horrors. When questioned about her discovery, Obadiah sharply reprimanded her for snooping, warning her never to touch his special medicines again. But Constance's curiosity had been piqued. She began to pay closer attention to her uncle's activities, noticing patterns that seemed to suggest a sinister purpose. It was then that she witnessed the events at the Thatcher farm. Thomas Thatcher, a prosperous farmer, had fallen ill with a fever that Obadiah declared was likely fatal. As the three brothers attended to him in his final days, Constance observed through a partially open door. She saw Obadiah administering a dark liquid that was not among his regular medicines. Within an hour, Thomas Thatcher began to speak in disjointed sentences about angels and divine messengers. His eyes were wide but unfocused, as if he had been transported to another realm. Cornelius, sitting beside the bed with paper and quill, recorded every utterance, occasionally asking leading questions. "And does the Lord show you who should tend to your northern fields, Thomas? Or has he revealed who should receive the mill you built last spring?" Disturbed by what she had witnessed, but uncertain of its significance, Constance began to pay even closer attention to her uncle's activities. She noticed how they selected which dying individuals received their special attention, focusing primarily on those with significant property and few direct heirs. How Obadiah would carefully adjust the dosage of his spiritual elixir based on the subject's size and constitution. You're about to enter a world where the lines between good and evil are blurred, where the pursuit of power and wealth can lead to unspeakable horrors. Welcome to the dark side of colonial America, where the Puritan brothers' sinister activities will leave you questioning everything. In the winter of 1665, Constance found herself alone in the, but she was not one to be underestimated, Seizing the opportunity, she conducted a thorough search of the house, her eyes scanning every nook and cranny for any sign of their nefarious activities. It was then that she stumbled upon a hidden room in the cellar, concealed behind a false wall of stacked firewood. The shelves were lined with vials and jars of various substances, each one labeled with cryptic symbols and markings that seemed to hold secrets only they understood. Another shelf held stacks of journals detailing in clinical precision the treatments administered to dozens of dying colonists and the resulting visions that had enriched the Puritan brothers. Glass distillation equipment, botanical specimens preserved in alcohol, and carefully labeled containers of raw materials showed that Obadiah's medical knowledge went far beyond the rudimentary practices of frontier physicians. Among the equipment were several items that later historians would identify as having been stolen from university collections in England, suggesting that the Puritans' criminal activities predated their arrival in the colonies. Most disturbing to Constance must have been the cabinet containing personal effects of previous victims, locks of hair, pieces of clothing, personal jewelry, and other small items, each labeled with a name and date. These weren't merely trophies. According to Obadiah's notes, they were materials used to create personalized treatments that would resonate with each victim's bodily humors. The level of calculated predation evidenced by this collection suggests a psychological detachment that goes beyond simple greed. But most disturbing was a ledger in Cornelius's meticulous handwriting, listing properties acquired, their values, and calculations of total wealth accumulated through their scheme. The final page included an entry that chilled Constance to her core. "You're about to step into a world where the lines between life and death are blurred, where the innocent are preyed upon, and where the very fabric of society is twisted and corrupted. Welcome to 17th century New England, where the Puritan brothers have made a name for themselves as ruthless exploiters of the weak." It's the year 1647, and Constance, a young girl with a keen mind and a will to survive, has just arrived in this unforgiving world. She's been brought here by her uncle, Obadiah, who has a sinister plan in store for her. The initials on a mysterious document have revealed a shocking truth. Constance is the intended victim of a heinous crime, one that will be perpetrated by her own family. As the heavy snow falls outside, Constance finds herself trapped in a nightmare from which she cannot awaken. She's forced to live with her uncle and his brother Jeremiah, who seem to take great pleasure in her misery. But Constance is no ordinary victim. She's resourceful, clever, and determined to escape the clutches of her tormentors. According to her journal, Constance has been gathering evidence of her uncle's wickedness, documenting the suspicious deaths that have plagued their community. She's also noticed a change in their behavior towards her, as they seem to be preparing for her eventual demise. The more she learns, the more she realizes that she must flee to Hartford, where the colonial authorities can protect her from her family's evil clutches. But the winter of 1666 is one of the harshest on record, and Constance's plans are constantly being foiled by the treacherous weather. She's forced to wait, watching as more and more people fall victim to her uncle's sinister ministrations. The weight of her knowledge is crushing her, and she knows that she must act soon if she hopes to survive. As April 15, 66 approaches, Constance makes her final preparations for escape. She's gathered her evidence, secured a small amount of money, and prepared a bundle of essential belongings. But as she records her final entry in her journal, she knows that she's taking a huge risk. If she doesn't make it to Hartford, her fate will be sealed. And then, disaster strikes. Constance is seen near the village center, waiting for the merchant convoy that will take her to safety. But Jeremiah Puritan finds her first, and according to witnesses, engages her in a conversation that will lead her back into the clutches of her tormentors. "You're about to step into a world of unspeakable horror, where the lines between reality and madness are blurred, a world where the innocent are preyed upon by those who should be their protectors. Welcome to the tale of Constance, a young girl whose fate was sealed from the moment she set foot in the village. It's 1647, and the village is abuzz with activity as merchants prepare for their arrival. Martha Gower, the blacksmith's wife, recalls Constance asking about the expected arrival time, her voice clear and steady. But Obadiah's account tells a different story, one of fever and confusion. John Pratt, a village elder, remembers encountering Constance with Jeremiah, but there was no indication of physical illness. He notes that Jeremiah quickly answered for her, stating that she suffered from womanly humors that affected her reason. The brothers organized the search parties with calculated precision, ensuring that no one approached the Puritan home except themselves. What occurred during this time remains shrouded in mystery, but Obadiah's medical journal reveals a dark truth. Constance was forcibly administered an elixir, the same one used on their other victims, but in a much higher dosage intended to be fatal. The search continued for 3 days before her body was discovered in the woods nearly a mile from the Puritan home. Obadiah pronounced that she had succumbed to the same melancholy that took her father wandering into the wilderness. Jeremiah led the community in a solemn funeral, speaking movingly of the tragedy and the mysterious ways of divine providence. But the matter might have ended there, another tragic death in a time when early mortality was common. But then, good wife Rebecca Wilson stumbled upon a dark secret. While cleaning Constance's room after the funeral, she discovered a loose floorboard and a journal hidden beneath it. Unable to read herself, she brought it to her husband, Thomas Wilson, who was deeply disturbed by what he read. Despite the risk to himself, Thomas decided to act, making a copy of the journal and sending it to the colonial authorities in Hartford. His caution proved wise, for 2 weeks later, Thomas Wilson fell suddenly ill after dining at the Puritan's home. The question remains, what happened during those critical hours when no one approached the Puritan home except the brothers themselves? You're about to step into a world where the lines between reality and madness are blurred, a world where the whispers of the past can still send shivers down your spine. Welcome to the tale of the Puritan brothers, a family shrouded in mystery and deceit. In the year 1647, a young woman named Her Words, though cryptic, hinted at a dark truth, one that would shake the foundations of the community in Hartford. The journal spoke of terrible visions and ravings, interpreted by Jeremiah as evidence of a guilty conscience being judged by God. As you delve deeper into this labyrinthine tale, you'll discover an investigation that was conducted with deliberate discretion. Officials were wary of making accusations against men of the Puritan, standing without incontrovertible evidence. The community's reverence for their piety made it difficult to gather testimonies from former residents of Newfield. Many potential witnesses feared spiritual retribution for speaking against men of God, while others worried about legal consequences if their allegations proved false. The brothers' careful cultivation of community support meant that for every person willing to express suspicion, there were 3 ready to defend their character and piety. Adding to the complexity was the nature of the evidence itself, a young woman's testimony dismissed as hysteria or female fancy in colonial society. The pattern of inheritance, while suspicious, could be explained away as the natural result of the brothers' spiritual guidance. And then there were the allegations that the Pemberton were drugging the dying to manipulate their wills. This touched on medical and spiritual matters that few colonial officials felt qualified to evaluate. His reports, sent secretly to Hartford, confirmed Constance's allegations, detailing how Obadiah administered strange, tasting medicines that induced confused states, during which Jeremiah would guide conversations towards spiritual matters and property disposition, while Cornelius prepared documents for signature. By early 67, colonial officials had compiled enough evidence to warrant action. A delegation was dispatched to Newfield with orders to arrest the Puritan brothers and search their property. You're about to uncover a dark secret that has been hidden for centuries, a tale of two brothers, Constance Puritan and Cornelius, who lived in colonial America during the 17th century. Their story begins in 1647, when they arrived in the New World with a sinister purpose. As you delve deeper into their history, you'll discover that they were not just ordinary settlers. By job, they were master manipulators, using their knowledge of medicine and psychology to control and exploit those around them. Their journal entries, hidden away in a secret cellar room, reveal a shocking truth. The girl's journal has been found. Wilson has betrayed us. Hartford will send men. All must be cleansed by fire, and we must begin anew elsewhere. Providence has delivered us this far and will not abandon us now. The discovery of their hidden room sent shockwaves through the community, and a colony-wide search was launched to capture the brothers. But they seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving behind only cryptic clues and unanswered questions. Some say they fled to the southern colonies or even returned to England under assumed identities. Others propose more mundane explanations, that they did indeed perish in the fire, perhaps by accident, while attempting to destroy evidence. But then, a series of strange events unfolded, and when authorities began investigating a series of mysterious deaths among wealthy colonists, the Prestons disappeared overnight, leaving behind a hidden room containing equipment strikingly similar to that described in the Newfield investigation. Similarly, parish records from Bristol, England, document the arrival of three brothers named Penworth in 1675. The question remains, what really happened to Constance and Cornelius Puritan? Did they escape justice, or did they meet their demise in a fiery blaze? The true fate of the Puritan brothers remains one of colonial America's unsolved mysteries. And as you listen to this tale, you can't help but wonder what other secrets lie hidden in the shadows of history. If you're still with me, be sure to like and subscribe for more spine-tingling tales from the past. You're about to embark on a journey through the darkest corners of American history, where the lines between truth and deception are blurred and the pursuit of wealth and power knows no bounds. Welcome to the tale of the Pemberton, a family of men who claimed to be returning from the colonies with substantial wealth, but whose true intentions were shrouded in mystery. In the bustling city of Bristol, these men established themselves quickly, one becoming a respected physician, another joining the clergy, and the third practicing law. The Penworths, as they came to be known, were revered for their charitable work among the dying, particularly those of means without direct heirs. But their activity ceased abruptly in 1683 when a fire destroyed their shared home, leaving behind no bodies to identify. Was this a mere coincidence, or was it a deliberate act to conceal their true nature? In 1670, the colonial legislature passed what became known as the Witness Statute, requiring multiple unrelated witnesses for any deathbed will, changes, and prohibiting those who stood to benefit from serving as witnesses. This statute was a direct response to the Pemberton's methods, which relied on false claims of divine revelation to swindle the wealthy. But by the mid-18th century, it had become little more than a cautionary tale told to law students and medical apprentices about the potential for abuse when spiritual authority, medical knowledge, and legal power were combined without proper oversight. If you're finding this historical account as disturbing as I do, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more forgotten tales from America's dark past. I'd be interested to know in the comments if you've ever heard of similar historical cases of exploitation under the guise of religious authority. Now, let's continue with what historians have uncovered about the aftermath of the Puritan scandal. The story might have remained buried in colonial archives had it not been for Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, a Yale historian specializing in early American medical practices. You're about to enter the darkest corners of colonial America, where the lines between medicine, religion, and law were blurred, and the consequences were devastating. In the year 1647, a family's sinister scheme would unravel, revealing a web of deceit that would haunt historians for centuries to come. Deep within the archives of the Connecticut Historical Society, a hidden box lay waiting, containing the original investigation documents that would change everything. Holmes' meticulous search had finally uncovered the truth, and what he found was nothing short of chilling. The Peyton brothers' journals, witness testimonies, and Constance Peyton's personal journal were all preserved as evidence, a grim reminder of the atrocities that had taken place. You see, the Peyton brothers exploited a society where medicine, religion, and law were still intertwined, using each domain to reinforce their authority in the others. Their medical knowledge granted them access to the dying, while their religious standing protected them from suspicion. And with their legal authority, they formalized their fraudulent acquisitions, amassing wealth and power at the expense of the innocent. The formula for their Elixir of Divine Sight was a sophisticated combination of opium, belladonna, and possibly other psychoactive plants native to New England. The dosages were calculated to induce a specific state of delirium, coherent enough to speak but disconnected enough from reality to be highly suggestible. Dr. Melissa Thornton, a medical historian at Johns Hopkins University, analyzed the formula descriptions in 2002 and noted that the combination showed an advanced understanding of neurochemistry for the 17th century. Dr. Thornton wrote, "They had developed what amounts to an early truth serum combined with a hallucinogen calibrated to produce a very specific cognitive state in which subjects remained verbally responsive but highly suggestible with diminished critical thinking. The formula was refined through careful observation and experimentation, with journal entries showing numerous adjustments to the mixture and notations about the effects on different subjects. And then there were the experiments. Deliberate and heinous, the Peyton brothers conducted their twisted research on unwitting subjects, administering different variations of their elixir to traveling strangers who sought shelter with them for a night. You're about to enter a world where the lines between good and evil are blurred, and the very fabric of society is torn apart by deceit and manipulation. A world where the Peyton brothers, their names forever shrouded in darkness, preyed upon the most vulnerable members of colonial society. Their journals reveal a chilling level of calculation as they studied each victim's speech patterns, religious beliefs, and property holdings before administering their elixir. The induced delirium was a masterclass in psychological manipulation as they asked leading questions incorporating these details, making the resulting divine instructions seem authentically personal. But what's most disturbing is the evidence that this was not their first foray into the dark arts of exploitation. References in their earliest journals suggest they had attempted similar methods in Massachusetts Bay Colony but were forced to relocate after raising suspicions. This pattern of calculated movement and adaptation indicates a level of premeditation that transcends opportunism, suggesting instead a carefully designed criminal enterprise disguised as religious service. As you delve deeper into the annals of history, you'll find that the Peyton brothers' methods created a template that others could follow, exploiting the same vulnerabilities in colonial society. A similar case was recorded in Rhode Island in 1682 involving three brothers named Preston who attended to the dying with remarkably similar methods. By 1690, reports emerged from Philadelphia of spiritual physicians who helped the wealthy achieve divine visions in their final hours, often resulting in unexpected changes to their wills. But what happened to Constance, the young woman who stood to inherit a substantial estate from her maternal grandmother? Historical records confirm that she did indeed stand to inherit property in England worth far more than all the Puritans had accumulated through their years of fraud. And yet, her fate remains a mystery, lost in the shadows of history. You may be wondering what happened to the Puritan brothers themselves, if the historical record goes silent on them after 1668, but local legends in various New England communities suggest they may have continued their practices under different identities. Perhaps they're still out there, waiting for their next victim, their next mark. You're now a part of this dark history, a part of the twisted narrative that has unfolded over the centuries. Will you uncover the truth about the Puritan brothers and their sinister methods? You're about to step into a world of darkness where the lines between good and evil are blurred. A world where three brothers, driven by ambition and greed, orchestrated a sinister plan that would change the course of history. It was 1647 when they began to weave their web of deceit. They started administering small doses of their compounds to Constance, a young woman who was about to turn 8. The goal was to manipulate her into signing over her inheritance to them and ultimately to bring about her demise in a way that would appear as natural illness. But Constance had other plans. She discovered their scheme and attempted to escape, taking with her evidence of their crimes. Had she reached Hartford with her secrets, the Puritan brothers might have been stopped years earlier, saving countless lives from their predation. But fate had other plans. Constance's death became just another in the long list of crimes committed by the Puritan brothers. It was a tragedy that would ultimately lead to their downfall, but not before they had claimed dozens of victims. The site where their home once stood remains a place of dark legend, a reminder of the horrors that took place within its walls. Today, it's a protected historical area in what is now the town of Newfield, Connecticut. Local residents still whisper about strange dreams that afflict those who spend too long near the foundation stones of the original structure. But one thing is certain. Between 1647 and 67, the Puritan brothers exploited the faith, fear, and vulnerability of a colonial community, amassing wealth and power through a carefully orchestrated fraud that would be remembered for centuries to come. Their methods were a perfect storm of scientific knowledge, religious manipulation, and legal maneuvering, all designed to keep their victims silent and their crimes hidden. As you listen to this account, you might wonder how such a scheme could succeed for so long without detection. The answer lies in the darkness that shrouded their actions, a darkness that was fueled by the perfect storm of conditions they exploited. A society where questioning religious experience was itself suspicious, where medical knowledge was limited and largely unregulated, and where community trust was essential for survival. It was a world where people were reluctant to voice suspicions about respected figures and where the Puritan brothers could operate with impunity. You're about to embark on a journey through the darkest corners of American history, where the lines between good and evil are blurred and the true nature of humanity is revealed. The story of the Puritan brothers is a cautionary tale that will make you question everything you thought you knew about trust, authority, and the human condition. In 1647, the Puritan brothers arrived in the New World, bringing with them a promise of hope and prosperity for the colonists. But beneath their charming smiles and pious words, they harbored a sinister intent. They preyed on the deepest fears and desires of those around them, using their charisma and influence to manipulate and exploit the vulnerable. As you delve deeper into this twisted narrative, you'll encounter a cast of characters who will make your skin crawl. The Puritan brothers' schemes were so calculated, so plausible, that even the most discerning minds were fooled. They played on the hopes and fears of their victims, using the very same tactics that we still use today to manipulate and control, bay and control. You will visit the colonial-era towns of Connecticut and Massachusetts, where the Puritan brothers' influence was felt. You will see the grand mansions, the opulent churches, and the quaint streets where the Puritans wove their web of deceit. And you will hear the whispers of those who suffered at their hands, their stories etched into the very fabric of history. But beware, for this is not just a story about the Puritan brothers. It's a mirror held up to our own vulnerabilities, our own fears and desires. It's a reminder that even in the most sacred institutions, predators lurk, waiting to pounce on the unsuspecting. And it's a warning that the true power of evil lies not in its grand gestures, but in its subtle manipulations. So, as you navigate this dark historical landscape, remember that the Puritan brothers' legacy is not just one of greed and exploitation, it's a legacy of manipulation, of using our deepest beliefs against us. And it's a reminder that we must always question authority, always seek evidence, and never blindly trust those who speak in the name of higher powers. Now, I want to ask you, do you believe the Puritan brothers truly perished in that fire, or did they escape to continue their schemes elsewhere? Leave your theories in the comments below. And if you're as fascinated by this dark historical mystery as I am, hit the like button to help others discover it. The true power of the Puritan case lies not in its sensationalism, but in its plausibility. You're standing on the creaking wooden dock of Newfield, Connecticut in 1647. The air is thick with the scent of salt water and decay. The trees surrounding the settlement seem to lean in, as if listening to your every thought. As you gaze out at the Bristol Channel, a shiver runs down your spine. You've heard whispers of a mysterious ship that arrived on this very shore, bearing a cargo of unknown goods and an air of foreboding.